What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Dad Needs to Talk. I'm your host, Robert, and today we are finally diving into a new upcoming manga called Galaxias. Now, Galaxias is a shonen series where the story and art is done by Ao Hatesaka, and from what I can tell, this is this author's first series that they are working on. And so they did a one shot of it back in 2022, and then the serialization began in 2024, which I'm going to touch more on that later this episode. So, Galaxias is one that's been on my radar since it first popped up online a couple years ago. But I kind of, with a lot of series, sometimes I just kind of get a feeling of like, you know what, I'll just wait. And I'm glad I did because as of right now, there are 32 chapters out. I read them on the K Manga app, but by the time y'all are hearing this, the first volume should be out in stores later in this month of February, with volume 2 coming in May and volume 3 coming in August. So now is the time to finally dive in. And I just got to say up front, I am happy that I waited a little bit, but that I finally gave it a shot. And I'll just say, just out the gate, I was not disappointed. And I'm sad that I'm caught up now because of the release schedule and stuff, which, like I said, once again, I'll touch on a little bit more later on. But what is Galaxias? So, this series pretty much follows our two main characters, this young girl named Geo, and then this mysterious guy named Nerade. Nerade? I'm going to say Nerade. Don't know how it's pronounced, but that's what I'm going to just say for now till I hear it said. So, Geo and Nerade. Now, just the basic premise and setup of this world, pretty much there are these people known as dragon folk in this, specifically in this one country that the story is kind of based in. And these dragon folk are, you can easily identify them because a lot of them have a tail, and they all have various abilities and different things like that. And that is one of the fun things, which I'll touch on a little bit more later on, was the encounter of these different dragon folk and seeing their abilities and stuff. But basically, like I said, you have this young girl named Geo. She lives on this island with her father, and she has this book actually titled Galaxias. And she dreams of leaving this island and going out and adventuring in the world because she wants to follow in the not necessarily follow in the footsteps, but she wants to just go on adventures like her lifelong idol. Her lifelong idol, Yuri Host. Now, her father is just like, no, 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 you're going to live on this island your whole life. You're going to live here. You're going to have a family here. You're going to work here. He just hard stopped. No, you're going to live here. And her father is a dragon folk person. And so one day while she is, kind of pouting and just, you know, thinking of her grand dreams of adventure while she's fishing, she ends up pulling the raid. Oh, he gets caught up on her fish line, and she pulls him out of the water. And thus, these two characters first meet. And so, immediately with this first story or this first chapter, uh, it immediately sets up this sense of adventure, this sense of fun, and a little bit more going on, which I'll touch on in a bit. Now, Narade, he is kind of like a fun shonen protagonist where, you know, he has amnesia to start off. Um, but he has this crazy mysterious ability. He's a dragon folk, of course. Um, and he is also interested in Yuri Host. And so you have these two characters who kind of have a shared goal in a sense, who ends up starting on a adventure. So that's the basic setup and premise of this series. Now, one thing I'll say, just speaking on specifically with the first volume, and I'm gonna just mention right now, there will come a point a little bit later on where I will mention where I'm gonna start talking about stuff beyond volume one. But for now, just general thoughts on volume one. But the thing I really enjoyed about this up front in these first, because it's 5 chapters in volume one, is that it presents a lot of information, but in a very digestible way and through natural conversations, through characters and stuff that are met early on throughout this part of the story. And so you kind of get a strong foundation set up front where you kind of get a reveal of a bigger thing going on. You get a setup for the state of the world and the role and importance of these dragon folk. And then also, by the end of this first volume, the importance of both of these characters. Now, diving into a bit more specific. So, within this first opening chapter, we basically get revealed that because there is some other dragon folk that come to the island looking for a Geo, and these guys that come are called Dragon Knights. So they are part of the government, so to speak, because basically a decade ago, Yuri Host is kind of set up as the person who killed the Dragon King. And so everybody's been trying to hunt him and all his collaborators for the last decade. Well, we find out when these Dragonites show up on the island that Geo is actually Yuri's daughter. And so they're actually trying to hunt her, kind of in a sense of, if you ever watched One Piece, spoilers for One Piece, I guess. This is kind of like a Gold Roger left Ace with Garp situation, and you find out they're like, oh, the government was trying to hunt down the son of the pirate king, whatever. And so in this case, they're trying to hunt down this notorious guy. And I guess in a sense, it would be like a reverse of like if they were trying to hunt down. Actually, I guess the analogy can still kind of work. But anywho, the point is they come trying to find her, whatever. And then you also discover throughout these first few chapters or whatever that some of them also recognize Narade, and that he seemingly might have also played some part in whatever happened with Yuri and the death of the Dragon King and all that stuff, whatever, a decade ago. And so that is kind of like the opening setup for this story. And I love how, we get all this information up front. And then after this first chapter, we start our journey. And so we immediately get to go adventuring, get to see new locations, meet new people, start getting to meet new dragon folk. And like I said, continue to get more information and stuff about the world, which, like I said, continues to do a lot of build up and setup of things to come. So, like I said, that's kind of volume one in a nutshell. Go check it out. Like I said, it is super awesome. Like I said, it's out in stores now. Now, I'm going to kind of start talking a little bit more beyond volume one. So, like I said, if this is where you want to cut out, I appreciate you. But we're supposed to start diving in a little bit deeper now, or skip ahead a little bit, because like I said, I'm going to talk about some overall stuff towards the end about like the schedule and publication and stuff of this manga. So continuing on where we go on, like where volume one ends and continuing, we kind of start to get a little bit more foundation for who some of our antagonists and stuff are. And so we have this one character, looks super dope. He's on the cover of volume 2 on the screen right now, named Schmidt Zachman. And so he can kind of like shape shift and stuff. And I love his introduction. And in my mind, I can almost hear the potential theme music for his reveal, because uh, we kind of have a moment where Geo and the raid run into this little girl in this town and stuff, whatever. And there's like this moment where they're talking to some villagers, and basically the villagers are like, what girl? Who are y'all talking about? It's only y'all two. And then the next page or a couple panels after, we see the little girl transform into this dope character design, and we get the name card, Schmidt Zachman, and it's just like, yo, it just looks super dope. And one thing I would say too is the art of this looks super clean, super detailed. Yeah, that's the panel right there. Schmidt Zachman Mujina Dragon. So like I said, he kind of like shape shifts and stuff, whatever. But yeah, he kind of has a very ominous vibe and stuff to him, to where he has his own goals and things he is trying to achieve and do. Um, and he don't care about anybody else. He is just focused on his goals and stuff. But we kind of get that set up, and like so, we continue through these next chapters, whatever. We kind of get to learn more about the world and stuff. And one thing I will say is that this series does a really good job of balancing that tone between kind of fun, goofy moments and stuff, whatever, with like the facial expressions and different things like that, with the kind of like more serious and darker moments. And so circling back to one of the things I talked about earlier, like one of my favorite things is seeing all these different dragon folk and trying to figure out like yo, I love the design. I want to know more about who this character is, what their ability is, and stuff. And so, yeah, that there's just like so many cool moments like that with these characters. But yeah, like I said, it does a really good job of just like juggling and balancing the goofiness with knowing when to take a more serious tone and stuff. But yeah, like I said, aside from just uh, Schmidt, we also get introduced to the I think they're called like the Dragon Zodiacs or something of that nature. I think that is their name. Let me see. Royal Zodiacs, which would be like the equivalent of like the uh the squad captains in Bleach, so to speak, whatever, where it's like, hey, these are kind of like the main people that we're gonna have to contend with as we go throughout the story and stuff. But and through these 32 chapters, whatever, we have gotten to meet three, four or so of them, I believe, at least a few of them, and they all have very dope designs. I'm gonna just show one of the first ones we meet is on Terrace. Like, I love her design, and she's a freaking swordsman and stuff too. So like her panels and stuff with the sword look super cool and super dope. Um, yeah, it's just like so many just like dope and cool moments throughout this. And like I said, I can already envision my head, if this someday hopefully gets an anime, this is gonna be immediately skyrocket up to just like how we just went through with Gachi Yakuta and series like that, of course, like, JJK and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, so this series, Galaxias, has the potential to be the next big thing. Now, a potential concern I do have though is the release schedule of this, because not long after the series started, it had to get transferred to another magazine, and then it kind of started going on a semi-monthly release, and like some of these last few chapters have been extremely short. And so from the little bit I read online and stuff, it seems like the author could really use some help, like more assistance and stuff. And so I hope that Kodansha or whoever gets this person some help, because like I said, like the panels, the art, the story, the world building, like it is all like so freaking cool. Just like look at this. It looks so freaking cool. And it would suck if, it wasn't able to get seen to its full potential, because like I said earlier, this series, the pace that it's going and stuff, and how the chapters and stuff, I don't know if this is the case, but as somebody, I'm 36, I have seen a lot of media, a lot of anime, a lot of manga, a lot of TV shows, games, all that stuff. And it's rare that I kind of have this feeling where early on, like I said, even like in the first volume, you can really tell that it seems like the author has a plan. Because, like I said, just the way that the characters are introduced, the world is laid out, and kind of how things have kind of gone along or whatever, it's at a nice, decent pace. We're not staying in one place too long or whatever. It's not um uh overwhelming you with dialogue and stuff, whatever. Like I said, like everything seems to be delivered in a natural, in-world, fun way and stuff that, like I said, is easy to digest and to understand. While, like I said, like sprinkling in some crumbs of like, hey, getting uh, steady reveals of learning more about Nere's backstory and Geo and Yuri's backstory and stuff as well, and different things along the way. It was just a super fun read. And like I said, I truly hope that this author gets the help that they need, so that this can continue, because this definitely has the makings of, hey, this is going to be a multi-hundred chapter type of series, not necessarily, definitely not going no 1,000 plus, but I could see it easily going maybe 200-300 chapters potentially, or whatever. Like I said, maybe kind of like, say, like in like that pocket of like a My Hero and JJK and stuff, whatever, as far as like a decent length or whatever, but not going, One Piece Kingdom, you know, those absurd numbers or whatever. But I could see, like I said, see it getting a decent amount. So, but who knows? Maybe hopefully, just like with I reminded of Ruri Dragon a couple years ago. Though of course I know that was like a different situation where it's like super on the author's health, where they kind of went away for a while and then they came back and they've been on a steady cadence or whatever since then. So, but yeah, so Galaxias, check it out, man. Like I said, I have really, really, really been eager to check this out. And like I said, I was definitely not disappointed when I finally dove in and stuff. So, cause yeah, just look at this, man. Look at this. Look at these panels, man. this this looks so freaking cool, man. But yeah. So let me know what y'all think of Galaxias. Like I said, by the time y'all are seeing this, Volume 1 should be out on store shelves. And like I said, it's also, you can read a few chapters and stuff as well for free on the K Manga app and website as well. But yeah, let me know what y'all think of this series. And I really hope for the best for it. But I think that's all I got to say about it. Let me just check my notes real quick. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So, as I always say, treat yourself to something nice, read some manga, watch some anime, TV shows, and movies, play some video games, and of course, live your best life. And like I said, follow me everywhere at Danny's to Talk. And let me know what y'all think of Galaxias. And if there's any other manga that are on y'all's radar that y'all feel like I should check out. So, but until the next one, y'all take it easy. Peace.